We can now predict seizures a few hours in advance, just based on the EEG data.
For decades, seizures felt like lightning strikes, terrifying because they seemed random. But it turns out they're not. They could be predictable, and that changes everything. I am Jennifer Weissmann, and this is the Israeli Trailblazers show, where tiny Israel solves massive problems for mankind, while the news shares the clickbait stories. Today, we're speaking with Professor Orin Shriki, who has developed this incredible headband called Epiness that sees seizures before they happen, because the best crisis is the one you prevent. Welcome, Professor. How are you?
Hi, Jennifer. Doing great.
What is the coolest thing you've seen someone do with their brain?
You can draw just by thought, draw paintings, control robotic devices. This is really cool. We do it in my lab, students controlling drones, controlling robots, doing very cool stuff just with your thoughts, just with the brain.
That's incredible.
In my lab, we use a non-invasive means of recording brain activity and reading them out in real time. That's really cool.
You have developed the Epiness headband that is essentially a way for the brain to predict a seizure. How does that work?
We established a startup company called NeuroHelp.
Put that on again. This is a very Richard Simmons looking headband. Remember Richard Simmons?
This is the headband that we developed. We're working on more advanced versions and just show how it looks on the inside. You have electrodes that can penetrate the hair and these flat electrodes on the forehead. And so this headband really measures what we call EEG, electroencephalography, the electrical activity of the brain. Non-invasively, it's very easy to put. It doesn't stimulate the brain. It's just passive monitoring of brain activity. We have algorithms running in the background that we developed in the company. They are based on our research at Ben Gurion University. We can now predict seizures a few hours in advance, just based on the EEG data. The hope would be to notify people living with epilepsy and their family and caregivers in advance so that they can take countermeasures. They can take medications that can prevent the seizures in the first place. And of course, it's important for safety. Just don't go do risky activities like hiking, biking, swimming.
Driving,
of course. People with epilepsy, they cannot drive for at least a year from the last seizure. Our goal is really to reduce the uncertainty that accompanies the seizures. You never know when it's going to get you, like in the mall, in some activity with friends. The goal is to really predict the seizures in advance, but also to even prevent them. And it's also very important to detect the seizures. Sometimes it's hard to predict. Not all seizures are predicted. It can vary from one person to another. So we can also detect them in real time. That sounds more basic, but it's still a very tough task to detect seizures and discriminate them from other types of activity in the brain. And for parents to children with epilepsy, this is critical. They effectively don't sleep. They sleep with the children. They are always at the fear that their child is going to experience a seizure soon. So for parents, it's very important to know about seizures as they happen and, of course, know about them in advance.
So you wear this headband, you go to sleep. What is it that your algorithm can detect? A change in the brainwave? Or what exactly is it that identifies, oh, this person is about to have a seizure?
It's not one thing. What we get is raw data, just indeed brainwaves. That's the input, just brainwaves going up and down from different channels of this headband.
Yeah.
But then we extract meaningful measures that quantify the underlying dynamics of the brain, many measures of brain dynamics from the different channels. And then we use AI to process all these measures. So it's a very high dimensional picture. If you look at the seizure, as the seizure is going on, you will be able to see it in the EEG. It has quite a clear signature. It's not a trivial task. Even for neurologists, epileptologists who are well-trained, they do not always agree about a seizure. But if you ask them prior to a seizure, even a few seconds or a minute before a seizure, they wouldn't see anything. So in order to predict seizures, you really need this kind of high-dimensional seizures. And it's only through AI tools that you can predict seizures a few hours in advance.
You would start with the indication seizures. However, there are other uses of this headband, it would seem, like pilots who are going to fly and maybe they're too tired to fly, or truck drivers who are on long hauls and it's too much for them. What are some other indications one could use for this Epiness headband?
There are many applications. Our grand vision is what we call remote neurology. To have this device at every home, like you have a thermometer, and be able to monitor your brain from time to time to identify deviations that may mean that some neurological disorder is developing. One of the applications is for sleep deprivation, fatigue. It's very easy to put this kind of a headband, and you can monitor the truck drivers, doctors. We also had projects in my lab with the Israeli Air Force in recent years, trying to monitor pilot brains under different circumstances, for example, to prevent loss of consciousness. When fighter pilots do high G maneuvers, they can lose consciousness. It can end very tragically. And if you can detect this spatial disorientation, and of course, fatigue, cognitive workload, and other things. In terms of neurology, we are working on early diagnosis of dementia, like Alzheimer's.
You can detect Alzheimer's through brain activity in advance of being diagnosed with Alzheimer's?
Several studies in recent years suggest that there are indicators in brain activity that of an upcoming Alzheimer's years before it really starts to manifest. So it's still a very difficult task, and most of the studies, they use cumbersome technologies like MRI, which means that you have to come to the hospital and do a full scan in an MRI machine. Our goal is to really allow these kind of things to take place at home with this headband. So it's very easy. You just sleep with it, say once or twice a month, or maybe put it once in a few days for a few minutes. So we could record your baseline activity and then identify deviations. And of course, it will all be processed by a trained neurologist that produces these early markers of different disorders. The goal is to have this kind of personalized diagnosis. So we really know your brain, how the baseline of your brain activity looks like, so we could really identify substantial deviations. And then eventually we can close the loop. So we talk about also personalized medicine, personalized treatment. That's the goal of this, what we call remote neurology, to take everything outside of the hospitals, do as much as we can at home in terms of early diagnosis and closing the loop by treating in a personalized manner, so we can really bring it to everyone. And our device really produces clinical grade EEG data, and it's affordable. And that's the goal, to do everything as much as we can at home.
Remote neurology, that's the theme. That means you take control of your own healthcare, you monitor yourself at home, you don't go to the hospital, you don't involve your doctor until you see a deviation or a change in the marker. I assume you have an app on your phone?
That's correct.
This is amazing. How did you come up with this idea?
My research centers around transitions in brain activity. For example, what does it mean to experience a seizure? It's a sharp transition in brain activity, and some networks in the brain, they switch into oscillations, into synchronized activity. It's a very sharp transition. Another example of transition is hallucination. Like when people hallucinate, it could be in schizophrenia, when people hear voices in their head, tinnitus, like you have this ringing in the ears, or due to psychedelic. What really happens is, again, some kind of a very sharp switch or transition in brain activity. And I was working on this using measures from physics, actually from the physics of transitions between phases of matter, like between liquid and solid, magnetic and non-magnetic phases. The thought was that this would be the lowest hanging fruit, epilepsy, that we can identify useful, efficient markers of epilepsy using these ideas that we bring from physics. And that's how we started with epilepsy. But then gradually the vision grew up, and our major goal is really remote neurology.
So remote neurology as a whole, but the out of the box, this product, Epiness, is a headband to predict a seizure.
Yeah, we developed a platform. We have the platform in terms of the algorithm. So any EEG data that we get could be from Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, migraines. We can train our algorithms to detect the relevant unique patterns and then generate relevant markers, early diagnosis.
Incredible. And do physicians welcome this new technique, this new home-focused, personal headband that can assess all these problems?
We are working closely with epileptologists, neurologists at hospitals. So our R&D team meets with them on a weekly basis. to go over the data, to understand the decisions of our machine learning algorithms, to see if they had false alarms or misses, why did it happen, and can we fix that? So we are working very closely with them, and are really waiting for this kind of technology because they know it would really help their families, and it could also reduce the burden.
I would imagine the upstream cost to someone actually having a seizure, what it takes to manage that patient after the seizure, aside from the family burden, having nurses and doctors and hospital stays and other sorts of tests, where if you could alleviate all of that, that would be a tremendous savings.
You can improve adherence to medication, reduce hospitalizations, save leave days. So we can really be very helpful to the system, but it wouldn't be easy.
Yeah. Remote neurology. I love it.
It's now under clinical trials in Israel, and we hope to soon start full clinical trials for FDA clearance in the US.
You mentioned it should be like a thermometer, that this headband could be in everyone's home, detecting maybe sleep apnea, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, a whole host of sad, debilitating problems that we all may end up with.
This is really the next challenge of mankind, really understanding brain-related disorders. We don't understand all of them. It's about the combination of understanding, deep understanding in neuroscience and understanding in machine learning, AI, that really allows us to create these tools.
Epilepsy, it haunts entire families. But what if seizures become predictable? This future isn't theoretical. The Epiness headband is being used and tested in Israel right now to help mankind. I'm Jennifer Weissmann, and this is the Israeli Trailblazers show, where a nation smaller than New Jersey tries to solve big problems facing all of humanity. Unfortunately, the media only pushes conflict. That is why we exist. We are sharing Israeli contribution. Please hit subscribe and please post this on all of your socials. Until next time.